You are welcome to tutorial 3. That is on communication. We studied communication extensively in class. And I think that you don't have so much problems. But we need to do this tutorial just to help you revise and refresh your mind on some of the things that we did. To talk about this, communication basically, we said it is just sending and receiving message between a receiver, or if you like, you can say between two parties. Because sometimes it is not only human beings that are in a communication process. Now, elements of communication. The elements of communication, sender. We talk about the sender, and we said is the one who is supposed to initiate conversation between the various parties in the communication process. Is to initiate conversation. The receiver has one function, that is to decode, interpret whatever is sent. It's a sole responsibility of the receiver to do that. Feedback, we said, is a behavior put out by the receiver as a result of the message he or she received. Noise. Noise may not just be physical noise in the background, physical noise around you when you are communicating, but it goes beyond that. Noise can mean that interference. I will explain noise and barrier to communication a bit as we go along. Things that interfere in the communication process is called noise. Channel, the means of transmitting information. Message could be a feeling or ideas or thought that somebody has, which he or she wants to communicate. Now, talking about noise brings to focus the difference between noise and barriers to communication. I'll try to explain this a bit. Noise can be a barrier to communication, but not all barriers are noises. Barriers are more structural and systemic. They are more permanent. This suggests that noise could be temporary. So barriers are more structural or systemic, affecting the whole communication process. What this also means is that noise may not affect the whole communication process. So barriers are not just small interruptions. Barriers are not just small interruptions. They are built into the way the way communication happens. They are built into the system. They are built in. They are structural. They are more permanent. There are problems, bigger problems, than just noise. Barriers are not just small interruptions. They are built into the system. Then they are deep-rooted problems in the system. For example, language differences, unequal access to information, rigid hierarchies. Say language. You see, look at it. Somebody speaks a way and cannot speak any other language apart from that. And somebody also speak Akan, cannot speak any other language apart from that. How can they communicate? So it's a barrier. That is not noise, it's a barrier. But as we go along, I'll explain what I think noise is. barrier is a permanent problem. It's a situation that cannot be solved easily just in a moment. Talking about noise and barrier to communication, a barrier can distort or block all of these stages. Communication has stages, encoding, transmission, decoding, feedback. A barrier can distort or block all form of these stages. For example, if people don't share a common language, the encoding itself already fails. If people don't share a common language, then to say that you want to initiate a conversation fails already. If there is a rigid hierarchy in an organization, the message may never even be transmitted upward. Maybe there's a structure, there's a requirement for you to qualify to be able to write or communicate with a particular higher authority. If you don't have that particular requirement, then you cannot go beyond that level. It's a barrier. It's a barrier. If there is a cultural misunderstanding, the decoding of the message will be wrong. Cultural misunderstanding. That two people or speakers have cultural differences. If you say this, it could mean that. If you say this, it could mean that in our culture we don't do this, we don't say this. This one must take place before this one can take place. Cultural barrier. It's not just noise, it's barrier. Then talking about noise and barrier again, unlike noise, which is usually temporary. Temporary means that a thing lasts just for a moment. It lasts just for a moment. Like background noise. If you are making a call, there could be background noise, or maybe because somebody is playing, or somebody is singing, or there's a church around, then that is noise. So a poor phone connection. Barriers are persistent. Something is persistent. It means that it goes on and on. Barriers are persistent. They don't just go away unless the system itself is changed. For example, providing translation, changing policies, training in intercultural communication. So if you want to communicate and there are hardcore preventive prevention or things that cannot permit you to be able to communicate, and it is not just temporary, it is likely to be a barrier. For example, I think we discussed this at length in class. There are some communities you cannot go and talk to women. If you are a man, you cannot talk to women unless you have to obtain permission from the husbands, or sometimes you cannot even talk to them at all. But you want to collect data from women and you want first-hand information. What are you going to do? Some communities you cannot, then it's difficult. And if somebody will have to go on your behalf, whatever question the person is going to ask may not be the same way that you would have asked your questions. You can ask questions, do follow-up questions, but it is required that you yourself take part in that. But language or culture has become a barrier. In this case, if you don't speak the same language as a person, then language is a barrier. You cannot write the same language as a person, you cannot speak the same language as a person. Then sometimes the culture, for example, as I said earlier on, men cannot talk to women directly. So forever, you cannot see the women to talk to them, to collect any information from them, or to do anything. Those are what barriers. They are permanent, they are persistent, they are serious problems. So talking about this, let's see some example of barriers. We talked about them already. Physical barriers. Somebody cannot hear or cannot even speak. The person is dumb. The person cannot hear, cannot speak. How are you going to communicate with the person? Someone will say you can use sign language. The sign language, some of those sign language items are not readily understandable. There are some we can make for the person to understand, like you become or go. Like, but if you want to communicate beyond particular level, then you need to learn a sign language, and you cannot learn it just in 1 minute. So for you at that particular moment, the physical or physiological state of the person serves, it becomes a barrier. We discussed language already, language or dialect. When you see this, the person doesn't understand. When you see that the person doesn't understand, so it's difficult for you to have any meaningful interaction with the person. Cultural norms, values, customs, beliefs. You cannot do this unless this is requirement is. You cannot do that unless this requirement is achieved. Emotional barriers. The person has a mental problem. How are you going to communicate with the person? Serious mental problem, not just fatigue, as we may call it as noise. No, it's a serious problem. Semantic barriers, similar to language, meaning. You don't share the same language with a person because meaning has to do with semantics, simply means meaning. So if you cannot share language, then how do you understand each other? Now, like barriers, noise, as we saw already, is temporary. Temporary, just for a moment or so. So physical noise in the background, or maybe you are making a call and there is network problem. You can move from one place to another, and then you can see that the network will improve. That is why we say that noise may not be permanent. Noise is not so structural, it's not systemic. I want to receive a call in a particular place. So the network wasn't good. I couldn't hear the person well. So I moved from one place to another. Then now I can hear. So that one is not barrier per se. I think that should be noise. Just a hindrance, a temporary hindrance, which you can just deal with. Maybe I trying to uh, move around, or maybe trying some one or two techniques, then the problem is solved. Psychological distraction, internal distraction. You are making a call, a child is worrying you, the child is talking, you want to take a phone away from you. Those are distractions. You see, distractions. It can also be kind of emotional stress. You are tired. The person is even half asleep because of tiredness. So when you call the person, understand the message so well. Those things may just be as noise. They are temporary. They are temporary. Then semantic noise. Look at this one. See, there's understanding is this. Semantic barrier is not the same as semantic noise. Semantic barrier could be a permanent thing that the two of you don't understand each other. That is established. But look at this one. Semantic noise. The person is speaking to you. You can also listen and you understand them. You understand each other. But then the person begins to use a jargon. Maybe, let's say, somebody is teaching physics and has come to class and has begun to use very difficult physics terms or chemistry terms. In this case, it is not a case that you don't understand the person. You're communicating all right, but the jargon that he has used has become become noise. It is not a case that you were totally cut off by what you were saying. No, you understand him. You were talking, then the person begins to use some medical terms or maybe chemistry terms or maybe physics terms which you do not understand. Then in that case, it is noise. It is noise. It is not permanent. If the person can change his vocabulary and use simpler words, then you can also follow the discussion or you can follow. So that is it. That is it. Basically about barriers of noise. Barriers are more permanent, systemic. Uh, Noise could just be something that you can deal with. In the context of communication, it can be resolved and then you can continue with your communication. So let's talk about physiological. Somebody suffering from discomfort, or maybe hey, the person could be hungry, or the person has fatigue. So all these still falls under noise. Is not hearing loss temporarily, or the person is fatigued, and the person has discomfort, and so he cannot concentrate when you are talking to him or her. So those are some of the issues referred to as physiological. In fact, some of these things I repeated them already. I mentioned them, and then the cultural noise, differences in cultural background, values, norms that lead to hello, hello, cultural noise. But so the whole thing is this. One thing I want you to carry along is this: that noise is temporary, short term, or just for a moment. But barriers are more systemic. They are systemic. They are not something you can deal with easily. Okay. We talk about communication and the types of communication, but let's do away with this briefly. Transactional communication. Look at this transaction. What is the meaning of transaction? Last semester, we talk about morphology, and therefore, we're trying to understand the words from their roots. So transactional, transaction between two people. So it's a two-way communication. Transactional, that's all I want you to pick along. Interactional communication, to interact with somebody. You talk, I talk, we exchange ideas. It's a two-way. Then dyadic communication. Dyadic, probably could mean two, I don't know. Dyadic communication. It's also a two-way communication where people exchange ideas. Now, but the most important thing I want to talk about here is linear communication. Linear, line, one, linear, coming from one direction. Let's say that you have maybe radio communication, a radio broadcast. And you are just going to sit there and continue to listen to the radio until maybe they finish the news, and then that's all. So it's linear. In other words, you don't have the opportunity to give any feedback or to interact with whoever is doing the broadcast. So that's linear. So transaction must happen between two people. Interaction must happen between two people. Diadic. I think that also has to do with two people, two-way communication. Two-way communication, it goes and comes this way. There is a sender receiver feedback, basically. But linear I think it is not. And a typical example is what I have just given you. We talk at length in class about intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal. Intrapersonal. Intra means what? Within the same person. For example, if you are contemplating whether to go and study on your own or you want to go with a friend, you begin to contemplate, maybe you are going to think about it, and you are sometimes in a dilemma. Communication is going on in only one person, which is you. And you can take a decision that you want to do this, you want to do that. There are cases where people even talk to themselves, like they, they talk to themselves, and which I can describe as intrapersonal. Or an example that I gave in class was the case that you are you wash your clothes and then you spread them on the dry line. Then you see the weather change. The whole place becomes cloudy. Nobody tells you that you must go and collect the items from the drying line because it might rain. That is intrapersonal. Nobody told you. You realize it. You came to that realization as an individual. The interpersonal, maybe two people or three people talking, like a class discussion or maybe a group discussion. Yes. Public communication, one to many. One to many. And I think we discussed this. Maybe let's say somebody is on a campaign platform talking, it's one to many. Or maybe a class, a dean in a school wants to talk to you, you are gathered at a place, it's one to many. Or maybe, what again? Start things like Vice Chancellor want to talk to first year students, they are all gathered at a place, it's one to many. This one, it is possible to have interaction, as in maybe ask question and be answered in a public communication. But then mass communication basically has to do with the use of the airwaves, maybe radio or TV broadcast, like in the case of when you had a coronavirus, the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, was giving updates. Such a thing could be described as mass communication because you stand at a place and talk, and when it finishes, then it goes away. You also go, you just give information. Interaction in terms of feedback is minimal, actually. So the information going on airways is it goes to a wide, covers a wide area, and it is not restricted to any person. Even people who are not Ghanaians who have TV can listen to the broadcast. It's not restricted. That is mass communication, information given on a digital platforms, if you like. So that is it. Now, what kind of question are you expected to see in the exam? Yeah, the questions are going to be objective tests as we had in the first semester. So the question is asked, and then we have alternatives A, B, C, D. So, for example, what is the role of the sender in a communication process? There could be many answers below A, B, C, D. Then you select the correct thing. Is it the one who encodes? Is it the one who decodes? Is it the one who gives feedback? So options will be there. Then you select the correct thing. What is the role of the receiver? Maybe alternative A is the one who sends message. B is the one who interprets message. C is the one who select the channel. D is the one who changes channel. Whichever is it, you got to be able to select. And I know that is going to be very easy because we sang these things in class as songs as every day. The questions may be application questions. In other words, you are going to not just see what is this and there's the answer, what is that? No. For example, the question will be created such a way that you have to think a bit to answer. What is the role of the receiver in the communication process? What is the role of the sender in the communication process? Then you can see the answers. He receives and he decodes messages. He creates channels for the communication. He initiates conversation. These are not difficult. They're not difficult. So let's talk about, for example, TV broadcast or radio broadcast. TV broadcast. How will you describe it? Is it personal? Is it interactional? Is it linear? Is it personal? No. Is it interactional? No. Is it linear? It's linear because the information flows from a particular point and goes out. There's no feedback. There is no interaction. So such communication could be described as linear. Let's consider this case. Like I said this already. A lecturer speaks physics terminologies to his students. There's communication ongoing, all right. Then he begins to use vocabulary which are beyond the understanding of the class. What type of noise is that? Is it physiological noise? Is it semantic noise? Is it cultural noise? In this case, conversation has been ongoing and they understand each other until the lecturer begins to use terminologies which the student couldn't understand. So that is semantic noise. Semantic noise. So there is not much thing to talk about here. We've covered a lot. One of the things that I want you to do is read the instructions very well. There could be sections. Maybe question 1 to 10 has its own instruction or preamble. Maybe question 11 to 20 may have its own preamble. Please read the instruction very well. If you think that you forget the instruction, use a pencil to circle the keyword there in the instruction. For example, select one answer. The focus is one answer, maybe the best answer. Or select the one which is not correct. The keyword there should be not correct. Select the one which is correct. Then the keyword there is correct. Otherwise, you can get swayed. You can get off because you have forgotten temporarily, you have forgotten the instruction and begin to select answers, only for you to realize later that you made a mistake. So now that it's a paper test, you have a pencil or a pen with you, circle the keyword, underline it before you proceed with each section. Please remember to shade boldly, but please don't make a hole in the paper anyway. If you know you are using HB and HB pencil, which is not so black, try to make effort to make it deep enough for the machine to identify. Remember to subscribe to this channel because this particular one, I'll post it to the class. The next one, I may not post it to the class. I may not use the link to the class. And if you don't subscribe, you cannot get it. I wish you well.